Me, 18-year-old male. My mom likes inviting me and my older sister, who lives on her own, out to eat at a Chinese buffet once or twice a year. For context, my mom and sister are both a bit overweight and I'm thinner. My mom has a habit of loading everything she sees at the buffet on her plate because she wants to taste everything. Then she usually finds she doesn't like some stuff, although she put a lot on her plate at once or it gets too full to finish. Since I was young, she would always put her food she didn't finish on my plate and tell me to finish it since I'm young and skinny and I'll be fine. Last time we went, I actually ate too much and felt sick after, so I decided to eat less this time. Right when we went to pick our food, my mom was looking at what I was grabbing and said, "Why weren't you taking more? It's not worth the price if you don't take as much as you can." I said if I was still hungry, I could get more, but she already seemed annoyed. Then we ate and I finished what was on my plate and didn't want to go for a second round. I felt I had enough. My mom argued with me for about 5 minutes, telling me to go with her to get more food or else it wouldn't feel like a family meal. I tried politely telling her I didn't want to eat anymore. My sister was silent through all of this. Finally, they went to get more food and my mom came back with another full plate. As I expected, she finished less than half of the second plate she got. She said she didn't want more because she still wanted to get dessert and told me to have the rest. I declined and said I was full and that she shouldn't load up her plate so much. She got very mad at this and said I was embarrassing her and to just eat it because I've always eaten more before, and I was just trying to embarrass her. She said everyone in the restaurant was staring at us because of the argument I started and that I was making her look like a fat pig by not eating more. She said she didn't know why I was doing this because she so nicely was getting us this nice meal. I told her that I would pay for my own food if she's that upset, and she said I was being cruel and manipulative, and she didn't know why I had such an attitude problem that day. Anyway, she finally saw that I didn't want to dig through her leftovers and gave up and got some cake and ice cream for dessert. She didn't talk to me for the rest of the day. Later, after my sister left, she sent me a text saying I was being very selfish and that I ruined our family outing, and I should have just done what my mom wanted to keep peace. And remember, she might not be around much longer. My mom is in her early 50s. So do you think I was in the wrong in this? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. The wonderful thing about a buffet is being able to try a variety of foods that are offered. Stuffing yourself to explosion to get your money's worth is ridiculous. Yes, people do it all the time, but that's a warped view. Your mother embarrassed herself by overeating. You only have control over yourself and you ate what you needed to be satiated. I expect she has an issue with you not being fat like her. The only thing you can do is not go to buffets with her. Your mother is in jerk for her behavior, and your sister is in jerk for what she said. If she wants to keep the peace, she should eat your mother's leftovers. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Your mom is putting her insecurities about her own eating habits onto you. That is not right or kind or in any way okay. You are not a trash can. It is not your job to eat your mom's trash. Your sister is trying to keep you from rocking the boat by standing up for yourself. She knows your mom is wrong. She is a boat stabilizer, which just means she is avoiding the real issue, your mom and her behavior. I'm sorry you have to deal with this nonsense. Keep standing up for yourself. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my update. It's been a week since the Chinese buffet incident with my mom and sister, and things have only gotten worse. A few days after the buffet, my mom called me and said she wanted to talk. She came over to my place and sat me down, telling me how hurt she was by my behavior. She said that when I refused to eat her leftovers, it made her feel like I was rejecting her love and care. She started crying, saying that she always tried to provide for us and make sure we had enough to eat, even when times were tough. I felt guilty, but I also knew that I had the right to make my own choices about what I eat. Later that week, my sister called me, furious. She said that mom had been calling her nonstop, complaining about how ungrateful I was. My sister told me that when we were kids, there were times when mom would skip meals so that we could eat. She said I needed to apologize to mom and stop being so selfish. I was shocked. I had no idea about the sacrifices mom had made for us when we were younger. I tried to explain to my sister that I wasn't trying to be selfish, but she wouldn't listen. She said that I always got special treatment because I was the skinny one, while she and Mom struggled with their weight. She hung up on me and we haven't spoken since. The next day, I got a text from my aunt, my mom's sister. She said that Mom had called her, crying about how I had humiliated her at the restaurant. My aunt said that Mom was considering cutting me out of her will because of how much I had hurt her. I couldn't believe it. I knew my mom could be dramatic, but this was a new low. I decided to go over to my mom's house to try and smooth things over. When I got there, I found her looking through old photo albums. She showed me pictures of us as kids, pointing out how skinny I was compared to my sister. She said she always worried about me, thinking I wasn't eating enough. She then pulled out a picture of her own mother, my grandmother. She told me how my grandmother had always criticized her weight, calling her fat and lazy. Mom said she had sworn to herself that she would never make her own children feel that way. I started to understand why my mom was so upset. She had been projecting her own insecurities and past traumas onto me and my sister. I apologized for hurting her feelings and tried to explain that I was just trying to make healthy choices for myself. She nodded, but I could tell she was still hurt. As I was leaving, I saw a letter on the kitchen counter. It was from my dad, who had left when I was a baby. I had never met him, and Mom never talked about him. The letter was dated from a few months ago. In it, my dad apologized for leaving and said he wanted to reconnect with me and my sister. He said he had been following our lives from a distance and was proud of the people we had become. I confronted my mom about the letter and she broke down. She said she had been too ashamed to tell us about it, worried that we would choose our dad over her. She said she felt like she had failed as a mother, and that's why she was so desperate for us to be a perfect family. I hugged my mom and told her that I loved her no matter what. But I also told her that I needed to make my own choices and live my own life. She said she understood, but I could tell it was hard for her to let go. A week later, I got a call from my sister. She said that Mom had been hospitalized for a heart attack. I rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Mom had passed away. The doctors said it was a combination of her weight, stress, and a pre-existing heart condition. I was devastated. I couldn't help but feel like I had contributed to my mom's stress and ultimately her death. At the funeral, my sister and I held each other and cried. We both knew that we had a long road ahead of us to heal from the loss of our mother and the trauma of our childhood. As I left the funeral, I saw a man standing in the back of the room. It was my father. He looked older and sadder than the picture I had seen. He nodded at me and I nodded back. I knew that I would have to confront him someday, but not yet. For now, I needed to focus on healing and moving forward. Thanks for reading my update. It's been a tough week, but I know that I'll get through it with the support of my loved ones. Aita for turning away. My late father and his wife. Because my baby was asleep, my father lives roughly 1 hour and 10 minutes away from me. We made arrangements for him and his wife to come visit us today. He said they would be at our place a little after noon. They have to drive their son to work first, who starts at noon and doesn't have a driver's license yet, and then they would drive to our place. A little after noon, considering he needs a little more than an hour to get to me, is 2 p.m. in my book. This is the time that we planned our entire day around. He then had the idea to go to a big grocery store that's close to us and really cheap, but which they usually wouldn't go to because apart from being close to me, they would never drive there otherwise. I told him to call me when they're close, and if our baby is asleep at that point, go ahead and do the shopping first. But if he's awake, to please come visit us first and then do the shopping. He doesn't call, he decides without consulting me to do the shopping first. It's a giant butt grocery store and they take their sweet time announcing their arrival at 4 p.m. I told him to go home because at this point the baby was asleep and my husband has left to go run errands that we otherwise wouldn't have had time for if we waited any longer or even entertained them. Theoretically, they could have dropped by, but they would have only seen me instead of all of us, and it would have been a very short visit because they arrived so late. He was obviously miffed about that as he doesn't get to see his first and only grandson very often. But I told him with a baby and errands, obligations to take care of, I don't have the liberty to just wait around for visitors. If you say you'll be here around noon, but effectively show up at 4, don't be mad if I turn you away. Am I the idiot? ETA, I texted him asking for an estimated time of arrival and informing him that the baby is about to fall asleep and he likely won't see him if they take any longer. No response. Called him a little after that, again asking for ETA. He was clearly busy with shopping and only brushed me off with an, "I'll call you when we're done." ETA 2, for those saying I should have accommodated them just because he's my father, and that's what's expected. My father and I have never been particularly close. I would describe our relationship as more like a standard uncle/niece relationship in terms of closeness. I don't feel obligated to put up with a whole lot of shoot from him, and I draw the line much sooner compared to other closer relatives. I texted and called before pulling the plug on his visit. That was the extent of my courtesy. Final edit. Thanks for the comments and the lively discussion. Those who voted, "You're the idiot," unfortunately couldn't give any arguments that would convince me of their viewpoint, because most were based on the opinion that since he's my father, I somehow owed it to him to invite them in. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, here we go again. I am not close with my father. Because many obviously don't get how I don't feel any sort of daughterly obligation to accommodate him, let me be perfectly blunt. There are many people in my family for whom I'd go to hell and back, and a guy who used to beat his wife and kids just isn't one of them. Those who base their judgments on other arguments, I partially agree with you and admit there was definitely pettiness or punishment involved to a certain degree. My mood was ruined because we squandered the majority of a beautiful, sunny day, and I just couldn't find it in me to be the bigger person. Thank you and good night. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot, he was disrespectful of your time, expecting you to wait around for him to grace you with his presence after changing plans. Visiting you seems like an afterthought once he saw what else he could accomplish. I live an hour away from most things. I'm used to the concept of best laid plans. It's not a big deal to have to reschedule when a visit with you is more of a priority. Comment 2. Not the idiot who thinks it's okay to take people's time that was not offered to them. Dad is not the only one who has errands to do. Excellent boundary setting skills, OP. Next time that behavior shows up, remember he knows the boundary now. I love your Fafo, it's so pretty. You should get a crown. Now for the update. Hey everyone, it's been a week since my last post and a lot has happened. First off, I want to thank you all for your comments and insights on my situation with my father. It's been a challenging week, but your support has meant a lot to me. So after the whole fiasco with my father showing up late and me turning him away, I didn't hear from him for a few days. I figured he was probably upset with me, but I stood by my decision. However, on Wednesday, I received a call from my father's wife. She told me that my father had been in a car accident and was in the hospital. My heart sank. Despite our strained relationship, he's still my father, and I couldn't help but worry. I immediately called my husband, and we made arrangements for him to watch the baby while I went to the hospital. When I arrived, I found out that my father had suffered a concussion and a broken arm. The doctor said he was lucky it wasn't worse. I sat by his bedside, holding his hand, and for the first time in a long time, we talked. Really talked. He apologized for not respecting my time and for not being a better father when I was growing up. He admitted that he had a lot of regrets and wanted to make things right. I listened and I realized that maybe this accident was a wake-up call for both of us. We needed to put in the effort to mend our relationship, not just for us, but for my son as well. Over the next few days, I visited my father in the hospital, bringing my son with me. Seeing them together, I knew I had made the right decision. My father's face lit up every time he saw his grandson, and I could tell it meant the world to him. When my father was discharged from the hospital, I invited him and his wife over for dinner. This time, they arrived on time, and we had a lovely evening together. It was a small step, but it felt like a new beginning for us. Looking back, I realized that my father and I have a lot of history to work through. His past actions, the abuse he inflicted on our family, it's not something that can be easily forgotten. But I also know that holding on to that anger and resentment isn't healthy for anyone. I'm not saying I'm ready to forgive him completely, but I'm willing to try and move forward one day at a time. In the end, this experience has taught me the importance of communication and the power of second chances. It's not always easy, but sometimes, even in the most unlikely situations, there's an opportunity for growth and healing. Thank you for reading and for all your support. It means more than you know. Aita for ignoring my wife's pleas for help until she was at her breaking point. I, 24-year-old male, have been married to my wife Amelia, 26-year-old female, for 4 years. Yes, I know we married fairly young. I work a consultant-type job which requires me to have periods, roughly a month, where I work 70 or more hours a week. We don't have kids and my wife does not have a job. Currently, I'm in one of these periods typing this on my lunch. My wife and I usually do a 70-30 to 40 split in terms of housework. But in weeks like this, I do next to none because working 10 hours a day, no weekends, of mostly standing moving about, means that when I get home, I usually collapse on the couch and then do some preparation for tomorrow. Recently, my wife hasn't been doing even 50% of the chores, which is fine for a bit. We all have our ups and downs, and I've never had an issue with a messy house. I've been microwaving some frozen stuff or not eating for dinner. My wife recently brought up to me that she was feeling overwhelmed with all the mess in the house and asked me to help out. I'm not in the house for about 12 hours, including commute and lunch break, so I don't really care how the house looks. I told her that if she wanted the house to be clean, she could just do her chores. She went tight-lipped and told me she'd let that go because I was under a lot of stress. I went to sleep soon after and got up at 6 and left for work at 7:30 before she woke up. I got a text a few hours ago that she was disappointed in how I'd reacted to her expressing her needs. I get that she's stressed, I do, but I'm doing my job. Is it so unfair to expect her to do hers? Edit, answering a few questions. 1. As a consultant, I get leased to different businesses for anywhere from a few days to a month. My schedule can vary from getting a month with only a few days of nonstop work and the rest off. I'm talking I do not have time to come and go from my house. I have to get a hotel room as close as possible, or a steady few weeks of a normal schedule to this. 2. Pay. Numbers vary, but in general, money is not an issue. Yes, I do pay for everything. 3. The 70-40 split was a mistake. It's somewhere between 60-70, 30-40. 4. No, I do not care about the mess, and I only have one request, which is to not leave wine glasses out. If you're going to invite friends over to the house when I'm not there, don't leave alcohol/drugs/vapes out. I hate intoxicating substances. My wife does drink, unlike me, so we have a designated cupboard for the alcohol to keep it in. 5. No, I am not Mother Gothel. My wife is not locked up in our house. She can go where she wants. 6. Currently, I'm working a minimum of 10 hours a day, with no weekends, 2 hours of commute, and 2 hours of preparation. My wife does not make breakfast or pack a lunch, and I leave before she wakes up. 7. I do not run around the house making messes in random rooms. I think this was a joke. I stick to my study, which is messy, but she doesn't go in there anyway. The guest room and the kitchen. I don't want to disturb her with my hours, so I go in the guest room for these kinds of times. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. But I would talk about why she's struggling to clean, and I would ask if the word chores is what upset her. Kids have chores. My husband is a teacher, and I'm an attorney. Over the summer, I expect him to do more housework, but I don't tell him that they are his chores. I might say, hey, I need you to vacuum today, but I would never call them chores. Comment 2, it is interesting how an unemployed wife wants to clean mess and requires help from a 70-hour-per-week working husband. Obviously, there are men that would help such a wife, but I would hire a maid and fire my wife immediately. Even the best intimacy isn't worth such stress at home after 12-hour shifts. Not the idiot. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my previous post. It's been a hectic few days since then, and I've got some updates to share. So the day after my last post, I came home from work exhausted as usual. But when I walked in, I was shocked to see the house was spotless. Amelia had cleaned everything from top to bottom. I found her in the kitchen, cooking dinner with a big smile on her face. She apologized for not pulling her weight lately and said she realized how hard I've been working. It was a really sweet moment. The next day, I managed to get off work a bit early. I decided to surprise Amelia by picking up some flowers and her favorite takeout on the way home. When I got there, I found her in tears on the couch. She had just gotten off the phone with her mom. Turns out her dad's in the hospital after a heart attack. Amelia was devastated and feeling guilty for not visiting her parents more. I held her as she cried, feeling terrible that I hadn't been there for her lately. We stayed up late that night just talking. Amelia opened up about how lonely and purposeless she's been feeling, with me working so much and her not having a job. She admitted she's been drinking more than usual to cope. It broke my heart to see her hurting like this. I promised her things would change and that we'd face these challenges together. The following day, Amelia decided to fly out to be with her family. I couldn't get time off work, but I drove her to the airport and told her to take all the time she needed. Saying goodbye was hard, knowing how much she was struggling. With Amelia gone, I had a lot of time to think. I realized I'd been taking her for granted and prioritizing work over our marriage. I thought back to when we first got married, how I promised to always be there for her. But lately, I've been falling short of that. Just because she doesn't have a traditional job doesn't mean her needs and feelings aren't valid. I remembered how when we were dating, Amelia told me about her childhood dream of being a writer. But her parents always pushed her to pursue something more practical. She gave up on that dream, but I could tell it still weighed on her. I realized I hadn't been supporting her passions either. So I made some calls and cashed in a few favors. By the time Amelia got back a few days later, I had a plan. I took a day off work and surprised her with a mini writer's retreat in our backyard. I set up a cozy tent with pillows, snacks, and a new laptop just for her writing. I told her I wanted to help make her dreams a reality. She cried happy tears and hugged me tight. That brings us to now. Amelia's dad is stable and recovering well. Amelia's been writing every day, and I can already see a spark returning to her eyes. I've been making more of an effort to be present when I'm home and to show Amelia how much I appreciate all she does. We even started couples counseling to work on our communication. It hasn't been easy, but we're both committed to making our marriage a priority again. I'm learning to balance work and home life better, and Amelia's realizing that her happiness matters too. We still have a ways to go, but I'm hopeful for our future together. Anyway, that's where things are at now. Thanks for letting me share. It helps to get it all out there. Until next time, if you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.